There's something to be said about gaming in general, and I've already had to do this video a couple times. I'm currently in the middle of moving, hence why there's nothing behind me. And I was having this discussion multiple times. I was in the process of filming this a second time, like I said. And I've come to a conclusion, and then I've also come to a second conclusion. My first conclusion is that Monopoly is a bad game. And my second conclusion is, for everyone that loves Catan, you can't deny that it's very similar to Monopoly. And I noticed that gateway tabletop players that are just starting love Catan. They think it's the bee's knees, and they're often like, they'll immediately, crap on Monopoly. And I'm like, after talking about it and really thinking, they're very similar. Now, I'm not going to do an apples and apples comparison, but it's just sort of like a conversation. And basically, I'm going to talk why I just personally am not a fan of Monopoly and why I'm not a fan of Monopoly, and the funny ties I notice it has to Catan. So starting with, I'll say like this. I feel like Monopoly, the game, really doesn't evolve. It doesn't really grow or get better. No, people are going to hear that and might get confused with it doesn't change aesthetically. No, there is a variant for any fan base you can think of. And I think that that's kind of the problem. It's a game that doesn't necessarily change what it's doing. It just puts a new coat of paint on it in order to get more people to go out and buy it. And to me, I mean, isn't it with most games, like, if they just want you to go out and play them, like, they'll offer something for them down the line, but they'll ultimately change gameplay about it. Like, for example, Seven Wonders is a card drafting mechanic where you're kind of building your own, your own empire, but you're drafting cards in your hand to people around the table, and you pick from them, and that's how you are able to meet the requirements. Well, they made an expansion for it, and you probably won't see it correctly because the camera is inverted, and that's Seven Wonders Babel, which you're also constructing the Tower of Babel at the same time. So it kind of puts a whole new spin on how the game is. Like, you want to build this tower because you can also benefit from it, but other people can also build on top of it and benefit from what you have done prior. So it almost puts like a weird take that or like engine building mechanic that just fundamentally changes it. See, with original Monopoly, like, it's just Monopoly, but then they'll put SpongeBob on it, or they'll put the Mandalorian on it, or they'll put some fan base on it, and I'm like, yeah, it's cool, like, shelf decoration, but it doesn't change how the game is played. And that to me is a real bummer. Because, like, as I've gotten more into tabletop gaming, like, you'll play games that have solo variants. You'll have two-player variants. You'll have the dummy player variant, which I'm not huge on. You'll have certain schemes, like the game I have set up behind this phone, Memoir 44, literally comes with a rule book of different map layouts. So it doesn't feel monotonous. Monopoly literally is the same thing, just a new coat of paint. The other thing is they do not upgrade the pieces on this at all. It is the same crappy, flimsy paper money. It's still the same stock, chance, and community bank cards. There are some variants of Monopoly that are different, like Monopoly in Space and Disney Villains Monopoly. They're different. You get special bonuses for doing certain things, and it does feel a little more different, which is a huge welcome change. But ultimately, the game in of itself still feels very cheap and flimsy, and like very little money and thought was put together into it. Like, it literally just wanted to go and just push out as many copies of this as possible without actually upgrading it. Now, I will say this to the avid Monopoly player and collectors. I'll get to that one in a minute. How many times have you played like any game and just the components felt really cheap and flimsy, and that kind of just like it took the wind out of your sails a little bit? I was playing a game called Raccoon Tycoon, where it's essentially a stock market game, and every turn you have your choice of doing 5 different things. You can either play a production card, you can either I believe you can buy a building, you can auction off one of the special bonus cards, you can buy a city, and you can sell resources you have. So one of those 5 things, and everything you do is going to change either your score or the price of what you're trying to buy and sell. And it's got a neat little aesthetic to it. It feels very much like a Redwall book, except more dapper and like early 1900s clothing on animals feel. But with Monopoly, it's literally you roll the dice and whatever happens, happens. And the components in Raccoon Tycoon like that also uses paper money, but it's money that doesn't feel like it's going to bend or rip in your hands. It's actually decent quality money. The cards feel glossy. They have a little bit of bend to them, but not much. They don't feel cheap. The building tiles are thick cardboard pieces. The product pieces are little cardboard pieces. I know in the deluxe Kickstarter version you can get little wooden pieces, but like it feels like more love was put into this game, whereas Monopoly just feels like a very generic quality components. And I know with some people they don't care, but I'm like, even Clue, like they upgraded the player pieces, they've upgraded the boards, they've upgraded the intrigue cards, they've updated the special prop pieces in that game. They went from plastic to metal and pewter, and it's like a little effort went into that. And it's like Monopoly, when they do take that little extra step, it really doesn't feel like it's anything special. And don't get me started on the variants where you're scanning a card instead of using cash money. It's a cheap gimmick, and I almost promise you nobody uses that particular version because it's a battery waster, it's a time waster, and on the 2 occasions I have used that variant, it's broken because it's old tech and it's boring tech, and you can't keep track of money around the board without using that card, I believe. So just feels cheap. The next one is Monopoly is geared more towards the collector than the actual tabletop player, because I've gone to several tabletop conventions, and now these are people who have been playing for years and years and years, and they have gone far beyond the new tabletop player trope of constantly hating on Monopoly, because like they've played other games and they realize what bad really is. Now, this being said, that I don't like Monopoly, I think it's a bad game, but there are much worse games out there, and for much more like dire reasons. Monopoly, it's clearly geared towards the collector in mind. You can't go in the local for sale ads or pages without somebody trying to sell you some variant of Monopoly for way more than what they bought it for. And again, I don't care if people want to collect variants of Monopoly, but like, let's call it for what it is. It's just like baseball cards. It's just like any collectible hobby where the whole goal is you want to have the collection in mind. And that's what this is. It's not because the game is good. It's because you like the wallpaper that's slapped on it. It has nothing to do with the game itself. So I'm just saying, let's be honest there. The big one, and this is where Catan and Monopoly eerily meet, and that is very luck-based, like almost entirely luck-based. And hear me out. Monopoly, everything you do dictates to the roll of dice. where you move, what you're able to buy, what you're able to do, how you get out of jail if you don't already have a get out of jail card. It all comes down to dice. There is no real interaction with players outside of that, except for when you're trading property. Here's the thing. I've noticed in Monopoly, if you ever were to trade properties or anything like that, it doesn't happen toward almost the very end of the game when people want those complete sets. So it really starts, I want to say, somewhere between halfway and 2/3, and then that's when it starts happening. And here's the comparison to Catan. Literally what resources you get come down to the roll of a dice. I'll argue that in Catan you have the ability to trade in the resources you get to get the resources you have to get resources you need in order to put settlements on hexes on the board, which allow you to now claim them if your number comes up. So you're able to benefit as time goes on. But it's about the halfway point you really start benefiting from this. And then when it comes to trading, it's almost the inverse. Trading almost comes to a crawl around the halfway mark. Because at that point, people are getting more victory points. Everyone's conditions are starting to come through. So people are less likely to trade. But the similarity is they both result on initial dice rolling to get what you need. Now in Monopoly, there's literally nothing you can do to benefit that. There are no development cards that give you a special bonus. Sure, there's Chance and Community Bank, and honestly, I think the only good card is the get out of jail free card, so you don't have to waste time rolling doubles. Other than that, it's either get a random sum of money or have to pay a random sum of money. And in that game, it also does feel like Catan, because you're either getting cards you can't use right away, or you're getting cards that can benefit you and screw everyone else in this, and vice versa if played against you. But Monopoly also is extremely boring. Extremely boring. Roll a dice. Okay, well, I'm on free parking. Okay, cool. Your turn. Roll a dice. Oh, I rolled a 2. Oh, I landed on my property. Your turn again. Oh, I'll roll. Okay, oh, would you look at that? I rolled on chance. What'd I get? Oh, I got $15 for winning a beauty contest. Whoop-de-doo. Your turn. Oh, I rolled doubles. Oh, look at that. I landed on another property I own. Oh, and then, nothing exciting happens. At least in Catan, it's you roll. Everyone collects resources on every single roll. And you at least have options afforded to you in some way. You can trade with other players. You can do maritime trading with the bank if you need to. You can buy development cards. You can build something. But I feel like more often than not, Monopoly, 80% of the time you're just rolling the dice and waiting for something to happen. And to the people on here who, when they finally start doing good in that game, how much does it suck when you have that one corner of the board completely bought out and every player manages to miss every area you own? That's what I mean by it's all luck. There is nothing that you can do to literally, stop anyone. I would love it if Monopoly could actually make new cards to play. A card that would allow whatever, an opponent to have to stop by this point no matter what. Meaning that they're going to have to stop there and they're going to have to pay you money for landing there. Now, obviously, that's a rare card and you wouldn't have everyone using it every turn, but I'm just something to change up the game. And honestly, another big thing with Monopoly that drives me nuts is how long it can be. Or the people who think that it's skill-based. It's not skill-based. And if there is skill, it's 5% skill. And that skill comes entirely in the form of you having the property and the money to do the trading and purchasing that you need. Because how many times have you played Monopoly and there's always one person who is checked out immediately. They're done. You know why they're done? Because they have not been able to really purchase anything. They're spending more of their money paying to land on other people's property, and they're just getting so ridiculously screwed over with the dice rolls that they're not having fun. And that's the biggest cardinal sin any game has. If you're not allowed, if you're not having fun, you failed in my eyes. There are games that are skill-based, but you can still have fun playing them because of what they allow you to do, or what they could, or like take that moments to other players. Monopoly is not fun. Roll dice, see what happens. That's it. It's just like with Sorry. Nothing says fun than having a really good game and then having someone land on your piece and knock it all the way back to the beginning. Or at the very end, when you need to win, you have to roll the exact number you need, otherwise you don't win. That's not fun. That's just really bad game design. And again, it's boring and time-consuming. The literal end game of Monopoly is you win when you have everything. That's not... First of all, that does nothing to help the difficulty curve other people are going to have to face. And how often than not do most games end because people just literally put their hands down on the table and just say, I'm done. I remember years ago, I was playing a game of Episode 1 Star Wars Monopoly, and I think the game went on for over 4 hours because 2 of the 4 people at the table decided that they were going to wait to start putting like the house and apartment build pieces on their property because they wanted to drag the game out. And it dragged on and on and on, and no matter how much everyone tried, the ones who were really suffering in the game couldn't come back. So basically, and you know how this ends, basically what will happen is these people will just get sick and tired of sitting at this table playing a game they have been struggling with for several hours. They'll just say, I quit, and walk away. And then what happens later on, you got someone bragging about how they won, and it's like, well, that's like bragging about skill-based, skill-based gambling at a casino. Well, I'm really good at the slots. There's no skill whatsoever at it, dude. You literally put money in the machine, and you pull the lever or you hit the button, and that's it. There is no skill in playing machine. There's no skill in going to a casino, except for the games that allow a more open variety of betting, or an open, or much more of a chance to bet money on broader stakes. Like roulette, you have options of literally just betting on what color you think is going to come up, but the payout is not that is only as good as you put on there, and it only goes up to so much. Notice the payouts for that game are a lot more the more specific you get. Same thing with craps. You get payouts for the much larger range of things, but the payout's not that big. And that's Monopoly in a nutshell. Zero skill aside from you're lucky enough when you're starting to be able to roll on the properties that you need, and lucky enough to not have to land on everyone else's property. And at that point, it's like, then it's really only fun for the person who's winning. I mean, I look at the games I played, and I still have fun playing them despite me losing. Aquatica I was having a blast with, because you are learning to craft your own strategy in order to come ahead, and yes, that does pay off. Obviously, a veteran player of more skill-based games is going to actually win. There's no way around that, but it's not entirely luck-based. So, that's my take on Monopoly. I was talking about it on Facebook a while back, and I like I said, I've had to redo this a couple times, and I come to the conclusion that Catan, I hate to say it, is kind of following in the same vein of Monopoly, but at least Catan, I feel like, is trying to get away from that basic formula and add a little more flavor to it. And I also think that's another good reason why it's such a good stepping on point for brand new players to the hobby, is that it's similar in nature to those games like Monopoly. that it's fairly easy to like jump in and learn from it. And while it does play very similar as far as what you roll and what you can benefit, I do feel like it offers more variety for the player to craft their own strategy around it. So, yeah, that's why Monopoly sucks.